When you say travel, explore, celebrate life, that's truly what France is about. No other country has so many varieties of wine and such good wine as France does. It's an art, whether it comes to production of wine. They take a lot of pride in the methods of making the wine.
So for active holidays too, France kind of fits the bill perfectly, right?
Tons of options when it comes to also, again, adventure, because it's part of the French DNA, I would say. Golfing is another big thing. Surfing is another very big thing for the French.
What are your picks for a really nice romantic holiday?
Paris is known as the pinnacle of romance, right? I know so many people who go and will sort of do the marriage proposal in Paris and so on.
When we talk of the mountains, what mountains come into your mind and what is something that people should really tick off?
Méribel, Courchevel. Example, a place like Méribel or Courchevel, you could actually party in the middle of the day in the winter. We also host the winter Tomorrowland. I know a lot of Indians go to the summer Tomorrowland in Belgium, but France actually hosts the winter Tomorrowland.
Hello and welcome to Travel, Explore, Celebrate Life. I'm Sunila, and with me today is a very special guest. And I'm so excited to be speaking about this country because we are going to be speaking about France. And to speak about France and, really deep dive into what France has to offer, I have none other than Sheetal Munshaw, who is the director for Atout France India. Sheetal, welcome to Veena World and welcome to Travel, Explore, Celebrate Life.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Sunila. Thank you to Veena World. When you say travel, explore, celebrate life, that's truly what France is about. So I think that's values that we have in common and that resonate, and really delighted to be here today with you.
Yeah, it's always a pleasure, Sheetal. When we sit down and we talk, we can go on speaking for hours. But of course, today we are in our podcast format. We are at the Veena World studio. And, when I talk of France, my obsession with France actually goes way back to when I was in school and I was hooked on to the Asterix comics.
Oh, wow.
And I used to fight about it with my grandfather, and both of us used to read comics together. And just reading about Gaul and the country, and that got me really excited. I wish we had the magic potion today, but I think all our viewers would love the magic potion in France because if you talk of France, I think it epitomizes romance, it epitomizes history, culture, and just the joy of living, the joie de vivre, as they call it. I hope I got that right. But Sheetal, you love France, you love India, and France and India together, I think, are great. So, what is it about France that really appeals to Indians?
So I think there are a lot of things, strangely enough, for two countries that seem very different. I think we actually have a lot in common. To begin with, I think Indians take pride in their languages, and France takes a lot of pride in its language. Cuisine is a very big center point. It's a very big focal point for Indians as much as the French. So I think that there's a lot going on between the two countries right now. Focal points, of course, remain, I would say, culture, cuisine, travel, education, because the president at the moment is very keen to have more Indian students, and he's championing the cause of making it easier for them and talking about bilingual or English courses, things that people don't even know about. And then so many other domains. I think sustainability is a common passion for the two countries as well. I think the list is endless, but we know for sure that the Franco-Indian ties have never been stronger than they are today. And we're definitely here at very interesting times, and we're all part of that and very happy to partake in that as well.
Sheetal, I think the first step to visit any country out there is the visa. And once you have the visa in hand, then you can do so many different things around the country. And France is one such place where actually, I mean, I think you could spend easily 15 days or more, right? Like if you decide to see every part or touch every region in the country, you can go on and on. But very often people don't think about the snowy mountains in France as much as they would about the other countries in Europe. But we have Chamonix, which is right there. And I've been there. In fact, we've both been in Chamonix together at some point also. So, it's a varied landscape. We've seen that through different films, different TV series, so many different ways to see France everywhere. So when we talk of the mountains, What mountains come into your mind, and what is something that people should really tick off?
So it's a great thing that you started with Chamonix, and I have a very special connection with that place, as you know. For several years, I used to represent Chamonix Mont Blanc as well. But it was in my role at Maison de la France, erstwhile Maison de la France, before we became Atout France, that we rightfully placed the Mont Blanc back where it belongs. Because funnily enough, there were people in India who actually used to visit Chamonix, go to the Aiguille du Midi and say it was beautiful, we were in Switzerland.
Yes.
And we said it's a neighboring country and it's beautiful that Europe has these, borders which are just like in 5 minutes you're across the border and you're in another country. You could be in Italy, you could be in Switzerland. But yes, Chamonix was in France, and we had to, sort of put that back on the map. And that's where I think the love affair with Indians and the French Alps started. But it doesn't end there, of course. Today we have a slew of other, ski resorts, which are not only ski resorts. We call them that, but they're alpine destinations. Megève, Méribel, Val Thorens, Courchevel. The list is endless. And then it really depends on what is it that you're really looking for. Some of these destinations actually are fabulous from the perspective that they don't only offer ski, but they even offer you, for example, a place like Méribel or Courchevel, you could actually party in the middle of the day in the winter. And they pride themselves in that. Or another place, where you could actually ski even in the summer. So there are so many different, I would say, options and varieties of things to do in the French Alps, which are very little known, but thanks to our, I would say, colleagues who keep coming year after year. You meet them every year, so you know who I'm talking about. And they all relentlessly come and try and showcase all the different aspects of what they have to offer. And that's what makes France special. We also host the Winter Tomorrowland. I know a lot of Indians go to the Summer Tomorrowland in Belgium, but France actually hosts the Winter Tomorrowland. So there are many things for people. There's hiking, there's just pure panoramic visits. And like what we were talking about earlier today, for people who live in bustling cities like Bombay, like us, where sound immunity is a part of your makeup, right? And then when you suddenly go into these places, they offer you, on the one hand, tranquility, peace of mind, pure fresh air, and on the other hand, you can as much enjoy an eclectic cuisine or go out and, like I said, go out and party. There are casinos. There are so many different things that you can do, which makes it for a very diverse offering. I mean, the Alps in itself is endless, I would say.
No, I wanted to start with the Alps because usually we talk of France, but very often we don't touch upon these things. So I thought today it would be a great time to start the episode with the Alps. And I have some really good memories of visiting these places, Sheetal. You mentioned a few names, and I feel happy. I visited at least three of those. And I remember, I think I was in Val Thorens, and what struck me was, and this was in January, so it was like the peak of the skiing season. And of course, we'll be getting into the winter, in a few months. But what struck me was you don't really need to know skiing to have a good time there, because there was snowshoeing, there were just tubes that you could get onto, there were just so many other different fun things that you could do. And the other thing that I really liked is the most of the hotels out there have saunas. So after a day's, spending your time out on the snow fields, you can come back there and then lie down in those steam and saunas and jacuzzis and really have a great time. Everyone is partying, like you said, and you can go on and on. And then there are so many ski schools. I do think that you should at least, even if you're starting off, spend at least 3 nights, if not a week, because by the first day, you're just sore from carrying all the equipment. And by the second and the third is when you start to enjoy. But along with that, another thing I think is the beaches.
Sure.
And France has such a big coastline as well, right? You can experience the beaches in the south, in the north, different places. So, do you have any favorites, or would you like to recommend a few places where people can visit?
I do have my favorites, but I think that in the role that I am in, I would not like to create any controversies. So I'll
Sure.
go more with
We'll talk about it
recommendations.
after the episode is over.
I'll go more with recommendations if I may. But I'd say, of course, everybody talks about the French Riviera, Côte d'Azur. That goes without saying. You start with Nice, of course, which is the capital. The Promenade des Anglais, which is like everywhere, all the postcards, everywhere you see France, Côte d'Azur, you see Nice, right? And like our colleague used to say, who used to represent Nice for the longest time, would say, come to Nice. Nice is nice, and it's got like this, cheer to it, and it's true. It's a beautiful place. Then, of course, there's Cannes. I would say, in a way, it's a star of the Riviera for all the reasons, other than, of course, the film festival. It's stunning. It's also got access to the Margaret Islands, Ile Saint Honorat. It's a really different vibe as well. Then of course you've got Saint Tropez, which is pretty much known for the lifestyle of the rich and famous. You've got Monaco, and that's all still in the Riviera, right? Then of course there are other places as well. I could go on. There are beaches in Provence. There are beaches pretty much in every region, even down in Occitanie, in what used to be the Languedoc area, where you've got the Narbonne beach, for example, which is again stunning. But again, I think the list is endless. The coast is endless. So we've got the Mediterranean naturally, and then you also have Corsica, which is very sort of different. I don't know if you watched the movie Tamasha, but it was shot
Yes, of
there.
course. Yeah.
So that was shot there. It's got a very Italian French vibe. Again, typical of Europe, where you can literally be at the crossroads of two countries, two cultures. And still it has an identity of their own, because if you go to Corsica, they'll tell you we're Cos. We're not Italian, we're not French. So, so that's a different vibe. And then as France, I think we're very fortunate to also have, I would say, a footprint, if we can call it that, in other parts other than what we call mainland France, right? So you've got Tahiti, you've got the French Polynesia, you've got the Reunion Islands. So I would say the list is endless. For beach lovers, honestly, France is a stunning destination. And there are so many options to choose from.
Yeah, sure, Sheetal, because, when, like you were saying and listing out all the names, you could just stand in France and decide, okay, I'm going north and hit a beach. I'm going south and go to a beach. I'm going
Absolutely.
west and still go to a beach. And the neighboring countries bring their own influence, like Biarritz with Spain, and then you have Italy and Corsica. So there's always that experience. And so, Sheetal, how do you think is the best way to enjoy a holiday in one of these French villages? Of course, there's Lubron with its lavender and, so many other places. So one for me, it's really difficult which, what to choose, when to go, where to go. But what is the best way of really enjoying this? And I think there was a movie that got me fascinated, The 100-Foot Journey, which was
Absolutely.
about the Indian chef trying to make it. And it's such a beautiful movie. And I think it really showed, for me, it seemed like Provence, but maybe it was shot somewhere else. I don't know. I think the villages in France are something really special.
They are. The movie you're talking about was actually shot in Occitanie. Back in the day, before the region merged, it was Midi-Pyrénées. So before Midi-Pyrénées and Languedoc-Roussillon came together to become what is today a very
Occitanie,
large,
yeah.
dominant region in France called Occitanie. But that's where it was shot. And I think there were specific places like Saint-Cyr-la-Popie, Albi, Sarlat, which are... So to make life easier, we do have a label or a classification called Les plus beaux villages de France, which is the most beautiful villages of France. So it may help to identify, like you said, it's very, and you're right. I think France's biggest strength is also its biggest weakness. We have too much diversity, too many options, too much variety. And so for somebody coming from outside, it becomes a little overwhelming and they're really not sure. So I think this will help, because when you go into that classification, you can actually see different villages that have been identified as some of the best villages, most picturesque villages of France. And then from within that, of course, like you rightly said, right, now, if lavender is your calling, of course, depending on the season, of course, you need to head towards Provence and the Drôme Provençal, which is, alongside the Auvergne-Rhône-Alpes region as well. I remember going to this particular Relaine chateau called the Chèvre d'Or. We had gone to the botanical garden and then we went there to see some of the most beautiful, I would say, stupefying sights ever. And what I loved about this hotel, which was very queer, is that it's actually interspersed along the village. So you could have a room and your room key and your room is right next to and juxtaposed with a local's home. And I think that's an unparalleled experience. And there are so many such experiences. But I'd say if you go by the Plus Beau Village, you'll find, of course, Relaine Chateau is a great reference as well. They do have most of their hotels being a very French brand, and really their ethos and their, I think, value system is all about showcasing authenticity of France, right? Whether it's cuisine or whether it's landscape. So that's also a good reference to look at if you're looking to choose from
Yeah,
villages.
sure. Because I think what's easier for me is to pick like a bigger city and check the connections and then kind of decide what it is that I'm looking for. Because most of France is so well connected by trains that you don't have to drive. Of course, you can drive and you can enjoy a beautiful self drive if you want to, but you don't have to drive. It's easy to connect by trains.
Sure.
You don't even have to keep flying in between the cities if you don't want to. And once you come into Paris, then check which is the next biggest city that you want to go to, and then do an excursion from there and get to the village that you're looking for. I think that really works well. But I would say staying there and waking up there in the morning and seeing the fresh food and the other things, it's just magical out there. Sheetal, there are so many villages or areas which are at an easy distance from big cities, and of course from Paris as well. And it brings me to the next point, because France and the French wines are something that is popular throughout the world. And of course, champagne comes in, and it's so close to Paris, but you call champagne only from the region of Champagne, right? Everywhere else it's a sparkling wine. So
Absolutely.
so let's talk a little bit about the French wines, and if you're a lover of wine, where do you go and what do you expect?
So, like you were talking about the connectivity with the sort of railways, and I think that's a very good point, especially when it comes to visiting wine regions, because when you're self-driving, it's great if you're going to villages and picturesque locales and remote places, and that's a great way to do it. However, if you're in the vineyards and if, like us, you like wine, well, then you better off
And
taking off the
drive.
train because you simply can't drink and drive. So that is one. Champagne is a great example because it's only an hour away from Paris. It can be a day trip, but of course, once you go there, you're like, I wish I had stayed. So I think, I strongly recommend one staying back. You're absolutely right about the fact that champagne is made in France. It's actually classified as UNESCO heritage, and it's the only place in the world. So even if they're making sparkling wines in other parts of the world, which are made by the what they call méthode champenoise. They're not made in Champagne, they're not Champagne. So that's something that we're very, very obviously glad about. We take pride in. It's again an art de vivre or a savoir-faire français, which is exclusive to France and reason enough to visit France, of course. In addition to Champagne, for those who don't like the bubbles and prefer the more still style of wines, right? I would say for people who are initiating into wines and learning about wine still or getting acclimatized with wine, it would be Alsace because their Rieslings and Gewürztraminer are more sweet, like sweeter on the palate, good for initiation. They actually marry very well with Indian food and curries and spices and things like that as well. So that could be, I think, a great combination to look at. Then, of course, you've got the Loire Valley, where you've got some of the best Sauvignons, if you're into that style. And of course, you combine those with the beautiful picturesque castles, and you really feel like a king for a day with your glass of wine and those beautiful castles. And then, of course, needless to say, the very, very, very popular Bordeaux wines, which are completely, I would say, when you talk French wine, people think Bordeaux before anything else. So, of course, Bordeaux has its place of pride, whether it's right bank or left bank, that's your calling, but the wines are just sublime. And then, of course, here I would say, yes, definitely one of my favorites after Champagne would be Burgundy. Burgundy is very, very special simply because they actually only produce 3% of the wines in France. They're very exclusive. And it's not because they're exclusive that I like them, but there's something very, very unique about the way the Burgundy style wines are. The Burgundy terroir has actually been, again, labeled and categorized by UNESCO because it's completely unique. It's unparalleled, and it's one of those rare places where there could be a parcel where you're sitting and a parcel where I'm sitting, and at that distance it could produce two completely different wines, and that is unique to Burgundy. So I would say definitely the whole, sort of the Côte de Beaune, the Côte de Nuit, that's a place that any wine lover must visit. And then, of course, you also have the Alps. So you have Auvergne-Rhône-Alpes, which is extremely well known for the French Alps, the wellness, but it's also actually home to some of the finest vineyards in France. There, I would say it's more about Shiraz. And it's more about the wine styles with, like the little bit of hint of pepper, spice. Again, something that would, I think, appeal largely to the Indian palate. And again, Occitanie. So again, we were talking about beaches and how every part of France you go to, you'll find a vineyard. It's the same with wines. People come to me and say, where will I get good food and wine in France? I'm like, in France.
Everywhere.
That's good enough. You're in France, you'll get good
Everywhere.
food and wine. Funnily enough, we even have a vineyard in Paris. So
Wow.
there is a vineyard in the heart of Montmartre. It's beautiful. I mean, it's in the heart of Montmartre, not so far from Moulin Rouge. It's a stunning location. It's a great place to actually have a private event or celebrate a special occasion. Just bring in the champagne from somewhere else and it'll be perfect.
I was just
So,
going to say pick up the wine from somewhere else, but
yeah,
enjoy the beautiful,
absolutely.
vineyard because it's amazing and right in the heart of a city. No other country has so many varieties of wine and such good wine as France does. Like you mentioned, I think every corner you go to, there's a different grape and there's a different, taste, and you can white, red, rosé, champagne. You find everything and anything that you want, and you have the
Absolutely.
answer to that. So I think, in fact, would you say that that would be one of the best things to bring back from France?
Most definitely. Unfortunately, we have a capping on how many we can bring back, and luckily, a lot of French wines are now available in India. So thank God for that. But definitely, I would say wine is a part of the French art de vivre. It's a part of the French living heritage. And it's an art. It's an art. Whether it comes to production of wine, they take a lot of pride in the methods of making the wine. The sommelier is a concept that was largely initiated, I would say, in France as well. And then, of course, like the whole, food and wine matching, the whole pleasure, like the French say, the plaisir de l'art de la table, or the pleasure to really enjoy a good meal. And that's something that's so, so French.
One of the places that you can look forward to a beautiful romantic holiday in France is the Loire Valley. But what are your picks for a really nice romantic holiday? If you want to go with your partner and enjoy, I mean, everywhere. I know the answer again is everywhere, but a few places and a few names that could be a little off the beaten track, or something that I should account for more time when I'm going there so I can have a great holiday.
So, if I can quickly go back to Loire, because I think you're right about the fact that they have a lot of castles. They've made a lot of efforts in trying to make it more interactive. So, I don't know if you actually did the whole histopad experience, where it's a lot more immersive. Castle stays is something that are very popular in the Loire as well. So, that's something one can do right down to the B&Bs, where you can actually have a count and countess receiving you in their homes. And that's part of the experience that you can have. If you're looking for unusual stays, of course, it's gorgeous, it's picturesque, and like I said, it also has stunning wines. When it comes to romanticism, I think, and I don't mean to sound biased when I say this, but I think anywhere you are in France, it's a pity that I travel a lot to France alone, and it's the one place that I miss my husband the most, because I feel like you need to be there with someone you can share it with and someone you love. So I think that's something that France has no matter where you go. Having said that, I think it's like you said, you can find a romantic spot anywhere. So I'd say for a couple, the key is to maybe find an interest. What is it that they really like? What is it that they're really looking for? Are they into shopping? Are they into food? Are they into fashion? Are they into wines? Are they into adventure? Do they want to go and try some fun activity together? Do they want to go hot air ballooning in Champagne? Maybe do a Paul Bocuse visit in Lyon? So it really depends on what they like. And based on that, you can choose the region. Because I can assure you there's a romantic spot anywhere and everywhere in France, including, of course, Paris is known as the pinnacle of romance, right? I know so many people who go and will sort of do the marriage proposal in Paris and so on. Not so far away, you've got the castles of, if you can't make it to the Loire, for example, you've got Versailles, you've got Chantilly, you've got Vaux-le-Vicomte. So you've got the Monet Gardens of Giverny. I think some of the places that are lesser discovered by, I would say, our Indians is perhaps maybe Occitanie, which they could go to and discover. Like we said, some of the most beautiful villages, really stunning, and, very nice landscapes, very diversified landscapes, from beaches to villages to cities and towns. Brittany is very little known by Indians as well, which is again stunning. Normandy, again, this year, very much in the news because of the D-Day landing beaches, but also because of the 150 years of Impressionism. So it's really well known for its art. Again, a stunning region, very close to Paris, known for its beaches, but not only, known for its history as well. And also, I would say, known for its beautiful port. So there's Honfleur, which is really stunning. There's Havre, which is really well known for its architecture. You've got like a whole culture of camembert going on there. So it's like the cheese land. Of course, everywhere in France you get cheese. It's the land of cider. Again, debatable with, Brittany, because they say we're the land of cider. So many such places, I would say, you could find your slice of romance. I would say even in Burgundy, you could do a castle stay there, go wine tasting, have some of the most sumptuous meals. So I'd say it really would come down to what activities do they enjoy as a couple, and then go out and choose a place accordingly, because every part of France has romance.
You mentioned Occitanie, and I think if I'm not wrong, then it does have some of the best venues can be found in France everywhere. And I think Occitanie has one such, which is the Airbus factory, right? You
Sure.
can go in for the factory, you have, but imagine having your own event, I don't know, a wedding or maybe a corporate event in the backdrop of these huge planes. That's amazing, right? So do you think that's a great way to get into an event there, or there are some other venue spaces that you would like to speak about?
So again, tons of venues all over France. Occitanie, of course, like you rightly said. Lyon is another place that has some stunning venues. Big concerts that take place there, very large events as well. Cannes, of course, needless to say, and the French
Yes.
Riviera have some unbelievable venues, right?
Sheetal, you also mentioned cheese, and I think I would like to come upon everyone's favorite topic, and that is food. And when it comes to French food, they are so passionate about it. Of course, a secret for all Indians is to carry enough pepper and enough Tabasco so you enjoy any food anywhere in the world. But French food, and I always say, look, even if you don't like the main course, there's always some fantastic dessert coming along, and you can never go wrong in France with that. But coming to food, what are your favorite foods? And of course, there are macarons, and there are so many different things. And I think Lyon, for one place I know, has some of the best food halls. Of course, again, like we are saying this, it feels like we are on repeat mode, but every place in France has good food. But some things that people should try. And are there any vegetarian options today? Like I of course there are, but are there's is that percentage much more today than what it was a few years back?
So, food is, of course, I mean, we started by talking about the commonalities or the similarities or the things that bring us together. I think this is definitely a huge commonality between France and India. Something in common, a passion, I would say, is food. And very, very much like India, France also has regional cuisines. And with every region, you have a whole different flavor, a whole different way to actually make food and to enjoy food. And then how to match it with their different cheese. And every region has its own cheese, and every region, of course, has its own wine. So, to answer your question to begin with about vegetarianism, because I think that's a big concern, I have to tell you that when I started out in this job, it was really, really hilarious because everyone would tell me, we want to go to France and it's our dream to see Paris, but we don't eat snails and we don't eat frog legs. And I was horrified to think that people actually thought that this is all that French people eat. The truth is, nobody really eats that in France. It's one of those rare delicacies which now you get in certain brasseries, but not really everywhere. And it's definitely not staple food. Like no French household eats snails, right? So this is one of the first, I think, myths that needs to be dispelled to say that, do French people only, or then the other option is cheese and bread. And I was like, oh my God, and what about everything in between? And it's just so, sort of the other big myth about France, I would say, is only Michelin star, very stuck up and very, very fine food, only for Epicureans and gourmands and not for
That's all
the.
that's being shown in the movies, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think, like everywhere else in the world, I think France has taken to not just vegetarianism, but also vegan. This is a trend everywhere in the world, including France. They're experimenting. Also, France is a melting pot because they have people from various parts of the world that have come and made France their home, be it artists, be it fashionistas, be it chefs. So all of them have brought in their own influence, which is why today, when you go to a city like Paris, you can pretty much find any cuisine under the sun. You have a lot of Peruvian, you have Asian, you have Indian, you have Japanese, which is a big trend. You, of course, have French, you have Italian, the European styles, and all of that. So, Moroccan, of course, Lebanese. So, all of this is part of French food culture today. And even in mainstream French cuisine, there are a lot of vegetarian options. For example, we were talking about Riviera earlier. And the truth is, it's one of the most vegetable forward destinations. They have beautiful food markets. They make amazing preparations out of vegetables because one of their favorites is aubergine, and the other favorite is bell peppers. So they make so many amazing things out of those. So it's not like the French don't like. In fact, a usual staple meal in France for lunch is salad. It might have a little bit meat in it, but you can do without it. But that's what they eat. So it's a myth that you don't get vegetarian food. It's a myth that French cuisine does not have vegetarian options. There are more and more options available. Yes, you started with pepper and Tabasco. I think that's probably where Indians find that it's probably a lot more creamy, a lot more, I would say, rich and complex from that perspective, but not spicy enough. That's probably the one thing that they'll find.
Our children nowadays, they want to try different things. They're exposed to so many things even back home, that when they are traveling, they want to have a taste of the local food. They want to do that. But as the children are now growing, Sheetal, and then there are beaches and the other things that we spoke about, there's always something to do. But the older kids, like I see her now, and when she's older, she'll want more adventure activities, something that's more active. So for active holidays too, France kind of fits the bill perfectly, right?
Oh, yeah, for sure. The French, by and large, by nature, love sports and the outdoors. So most of them, like, are into either playing tennis or football, or they'll go for a hike. The rondo is a big thing in France. Of course, we discuss ski and the Alps and all of that. You, of course, have them going into Gordes. So for us, God may be a stunning, beautiful place from the lavender perspective. They'll actually go there to do more water-driven rafting and things like that. So those are some of the activities that you can do. And you can also incidentally do rafting in Chamonix, for example. Things that people don't necessarily associate with France, but you can do them. So tons of options when it comes to also, again, adventure, because it's part of the French DNA, I would say. The Trois Vallées is actually one of the most well-renowned places to learn to ski, to actually ski, but you can learn to ski, and the École de Ski in France are some of the best in the world. So for initiation into all of that, I think France is one of the most fabulous places to learn. Then, of course, you've got the Tour de France and everything to do with biking. Some of the best biking routes in France are made available to people, even if they're amateur. So, again, that's something that one can look at. So, the options really, I would say, even in terms of adventure, are endless. Whether you're the type who wants to do something more hardcore, um, or you're someone who just wants to, do you want to be accompanied and do like a tandem paraglide? Do you want to go bungee jumping? Do you want to go and do a scenic helicopter ride? Would you rather go and do a hot air ballooning? It could be in a castle around Paris. It could be, like I said, in the vineyards in Champagne. Incidentally, hot air balloons were invented in France as well.
Oh, wow.
So it really depends on whether you're the more passive, wants to be accompanied kind of adventure, or you want to do something hardcore yourself. But the options, again, to answer your question, are endless. Endless.
I can see that already and I can feel it. And like I said, this episode needs to be played on repeat mode. Sheetal, we spoke about food already. We spoke of adventure. We spoke of so many different things. And from what you just said, I also picked up this thing that France is really a year round destination, because you have things to do in the summer, of course, and then you have things, you have the lavender. So if you time your holiday right, then you can get whatever it is that you want. And going into winter, again, there are so many things to do in winter. So you could there's no good or bad time. You just have to pick a time and then decide what you want to do, or decide what you want to do and then pick your time and go to France. Well, we could go on talking about France for another 2 hours, but I think it's time to end this episode. And we've spoken about food already, but I think I would like to touch upon one last thing, which not only the women but the men would like to, is French fashion and the French style. Because I think endless things are said about how casually chic and elegant the French people are and their clothes. But even the shopping malls are a beauty. You could spend a day, doing it's like an attraction in itself, right? So shopping in France is
Most
amazing.
definitely. Most definitely. And like you said, I would add just one more word to your repertoire of the descriptions that you made for fashion in France. I would also say they're effortlessly chic. I just don't understand how some of my French colleagues can show up in a pair of jeans and a t-shirt and still look very chic. So yeah, that I think is the French DNA. But having said that, for those of us who don't have necessarily the DNA, we can certainly, sort of indulge in some of their most iconic, I would say, like you rightly said, they're monuments. If you look at some of the departmental stores, whether you're talking about a Printemps, whether you're talking about a Saint Maritain, whether you're talking about a Galerie Lafayette, they are institutions in their own right. They are just gorgeous, gorgeous monuments wherein there is a whole, as they call, a lieu de vie, where there is a whole life. And fashion is a lifestyle. So within that lifestyle and in those departmental stores, you will find not just fashion brands for apparel, but an extension into homes, an extension into everything to do with wellness. You will have salons, because also showing up in the right manner is very French. You'll also find, food, because even that has to come in. So for example, the Galerie Lafayette also does culinary classes within the departmental store, or for instance they have something called the Bordeaux Tech, which actually has some of the largest repertoire of Bordeaux wines than anywhere else in France. So things like that. Or if you take something like a Vallée Village, for example, again, so-called outlet mall, but if you go and see it, it is so French, it is so chic, and there's nothing outlet about it. You know what I mean? Except the prices, which is why you want to go there. But, and again, there as well, there is an accent on food. So there'll be a very good restaurant that dishes out great meals, and it's not like a, McDo on the go sort of experience, because that's the French lifestyle and that's French fashion, right? It's a way of life. So I think that is something that's amazing about France. If one were to, you were talking about timing your holiday. Perhaps for fashionistas, what might help is either if you're really fashion forward and you want to be there to see the latest collections and be a part of that, well, you plan it around the fashion weeks. And if you're really in for a good deal, then you plan it around the summer or winter sales. So that would help you, mark out your calendar, if I can call it that, from that perspective. But yeah, I mean, it's and it's not just Paris. Of course, Paris is the fashion capital, but you do have fashion again in most parts of France. In this case, I would say specifically, yes. If you're really into shopping and fashion, Paris would be your place. And of course, it's well known for all the larger brands, and I don't need to name them, everyone knows them. But the one thing to remember about those brands is it's not just about, the way it's consumed today. It's not just about the French call it affichage, just to, sort of go out and put out the brand. It's not really that. Again, it's a whole art de vivre. It's a real art. It's a legacy. It's an artisanal, I would say, heritage that has been passed down. And it's about design sensibility. And again, it's about art de vivre. So I think that's what, French fashion embodies. So I would say people should really look out for not just the top tier, big, well-known brands, but also the local brands and the upcoming, artists, or the upcoming, sort of stylists, and the kind of things that they're coming up with, and the kind of fashion that they also, have to propose. And I think those are things that people should look at as well, when they go and shop in France.
This was just amazing, Sheetal. Thank you so much. And if you've realized, we've been speaking for like about an hour and we've come to Paris only at the end of it. So I think to dive into Paris, we need another episode. But
Most
this has been
definitely.
really amazing. And there is just so much to do in France that, I think we should start planning a holiday to France right away, because there are so many things to do there. And like Sheetal said, there are so many reasons, seasons. You don't need anything. You can just pick up your bags and go at any time to France. It was really nice speaking to you, Sheetal, and we hope we can welcome you back for another episode in Travel Explore Celebrate Life on a different aspect of France. And for everyone out there, I hope to see you in France very soon. Bye bye.